Have you ever driven a Formula One car around a track?
No.
Why not?
I think I couldn't do it. I don't want to do it. I would embarrass myself.
We want James Hunt. You know, it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah. Rock and roll, yeah. We want rock and roll.
Just when no one's looking on a late Thursday evening,
There's
you know?
always somebody looking when an F1 car is going around. So sometimes he said, Guenther, I had to take a few bits out because that wouldn't have been good, you know.
Okay.
That's my racing language, the cursing.
Good man.
By the way, that wasn't me, you know, that was somebody else. And I never asked my wife what she thinks about Drive to Survive, because that is one of the reasons I don't watch it, because guess what? I don't want an answer, because she's not happy about it. That's Gene Haas, you know.
Welcome, everybody. Conan here in studio. Conan, hello.
Hey, Joe.
And a warm welcome. He has joined the team. We are expanding in numbers. Not a minute too soon. Ronan Mullen in the building. Hello, Ronan.
Hi, Joe. Good to see you again.
Hey.
You put me on the back foot there where I almost commandeered Conan's chair. So I feel very much like the newcomer.
Yeah, well, it was a bit to sit in your chair. I didn't know how you'd feel about that. I said I wouldn't if I was you.
Yeah, I think after day 3 and day 4, I think I had cemented this chair.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. We settle into our routines very quickly. Ronan tried to pull a Heimer Hallgrimsson on me this morning. He said, I'll probably just be here in an observational capacity today. I said, you bloody won't.
We've got a lot of emails, a lot of issues that you need to fix for us now, Ronan.
I was trying to get John O'Shea to sit in here, but he's otherwise engaged.
No. Come in, say hello to everybody. No pressure. This is kind of just a round the houses, any other business kind of a podcast, if you're wondering. I suspect we may start doing more of these. We're just going to bring you up to speed on what's going on in the world of sport generally. We have a few emails. I was watching something very good on Amazon Prime last night I wanted to mention to you. And that's kind of the gist, really. Conversation with Guenther Steiner. He of Team Haas, Formula One Drive to Survive, which we're really looking forward to. We've about 20 minutes with him. It's not going to be, you know, your life and times, but it'll be enough to have a bit of chat with Guenther, who's generally the best thing to have come out of Drive to Survive is the consensus. We would never have known him. I mean, it's a funny thing when you think of his life. He would have been such a Team Haas, nobody, no great results, no great standings, and yet now he's like top 2, 3, 4 faces of the entire sport.
And like we had spoken about before, we never would have thought that our lives would be reflected in the lives of Formula One stars and in this world. So thank you, Guenther.
Yeah, so he's on the way. Ronan, by the way, will bring so much to the podcast, not to talk about you like you're not here, but even just this morning, Colin, he turned to me and he said, you know the rule changes, Jim Gavin's business, you covered it. We could do something next week maybe on the most consequential rule changes in sport in history, things like the three-pointer in basketball and others. And I thought, good to have you back, buddy.
Yeah, because I saw an interesting graphic on Reddit there. It's the 3-point arc and how it changed the percentage shots of 2-pointers versus 3-pointers. So obviously under the basket was the predominant area where people got their scores, and now it's the opposite. So you're kind of, as most like basketball fans will know, you're incentivized to shoot from behind the 3-point arc. So it'll be interesting to see. We won't have the data for a while if these changes do come through, the extent to which it does lead to teams taking more, going for that 2-point shot or the goal. And as we all know, the most dangerous pass in Gaelic football is the miss-hit shot. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a lot of...
Yeah, no, I'm sure there is a long-range Steph Curry of GA out there now who's 17, 18, about to be born and revolutionise things. Yeah, it's very possible.
I love that one morning in and Ronan's knocked some serious structure into this and we spent 10 days trying to name a Monday show.
Yes. Yeah, we won't bore you with that situation.
You missed a lot, Ronan.
Yeah. So here's what is generally going on. I would say it's quite enough news day. We'll come on to Heimer Hallgrimsson in Ireland, who trained this morning, unusually, a match day -1 morning session as opposed to training at the ground the night before the game. We will touch on Caoimhín Kelleher, who, you know, we're not wishing ill on Alisson or stabbing the voodoo doll, but good news for him. But first, Jurgen Klopp, back in football, was the headline, and everybody thought, oh my God, I knew it, he couldn't stay away. It's not quite back in management. So Jurgen Klopp is head of global soccer at Red Bull. He seems to have a get-out clause as well, widely reported. He does have a get-out clause, which will allow him to apply for the German national team once Julian Nagelsmann steps down. Nagelsmann will obviously be there for the World Cup in 26, barring disaster next year. So Klopp has said, I see my role primarily as a mentor for the coaches and management of Red Bull clubs. So he's back involved. Kind of an interesting choice for such a exceptionally popular person in Germany to hitch his wagon to Red Bull, and all of that entails. Deeply unpopular in German football. I was reminding myself of the Red Bull extravaganza in sport. There's a great piece in the New York Times by Nancy Froston, if you're interested, why Red Bull bought sports teams and the impact on them. And so it's 20 years next year since they first went into football and bought Salzburg. So it's really kind of entrenched now. They own at present RB Salzburg, RB Leipzig in Germany, New York Red Bulls. As of this summer, they have a minority share in Leeds. They have a team in Brazil, Formula One team obviously, and lots of other kind of extreme action sports. And even, it was kind of striking when they bought a stake in Leeds, which was their first foray into English football. The chairman, Parag Marathe, had to come out to absolutely reassure everybody the club is not going to be called Leeds Red Bulls. But obviously that was the fear. Red Bull are the third most valuable soft drinks company in the world. They're number 3. Care to guess who number 1 is?
Well, it has to be Coca-Cola, no?
By a gazillion miles.
Yeah.
Care to guess who number 2 is?
Ooh.
Pepsi?
By quite a lot as well.
Really? Yeah, I was wondering, had they fallen off?
No. Coca-Cola is double the value of Pepsi, but Pepsi is 3 times the value of Red Bull. And then with Red Bull, they're part of like a pack.
Yeah.
There's not much difference between Red Bull and Monster in 4th.
That was going to be my Pepsi guess. But yeah.
4th in the world?
In the world, Monster. You'll never guess 5th.
Everywhere.
It'll make sense when you're here.
Iron Brew.
Nescafe. Gatorade, Dr. Pepper. That's the order, if you're interested in these things. So obviously for Red Bull, this was a branding exercise, and it's part of the vibe of the company. They will generally change the name of the team, the kit, the shirt sponsor. 3 of their 4 home grounds are called Red Bull Arena. So there's no subtlety here. But it's striking, and in the piece in the New York Times, the point is made. It's also very lucrative. The New York Red Bulls, for instance, in 2006 cost 15 million sterling. They're now worth hundreds of millions. So 1, you get the branding exercise, but 2, you get an asset which appreciates very dramatically. So they're making money in a big way. I was reminding myself of the football situation then. So RB Salzburg, where Pep Linders is currently manager. It's all so incestuous, isn't it? So he hasn't had a good start to the season, by the way. 2 Champions League defeats and 5-0 hammering in the league. But Red Bull moved in and bought Salzburg in 2005. Fans apoplectic. There were protests. They changed the team colours, the name of the team, the stadium. This was sacrilege in European football. Unthinkable that it could happen. And over time, because they've actually, it seems, done such a good job, they're incredibly well run. Ticket prices are low. Ralf Rangnick did an extraordinary job. They won 10 league titles in a row. They reached the semi-final of the Europa League in 2018. This is a kind of this is acceptable-ish. Germany in Leipzig, where Klopp, I guess, will spend some time for sure. Far less popular. They have the 50+1 rule, fan ownership, that is sacred. There's a deep suspicion of commercialism and football. There's a kind of a version of football that nobody wants, and they felt that Red Bull very much represented that. So, but right across the league, not least in Leipzig, where fans started their own team. They're now up to the 3rd division, that team. They've no home ground, but they're making their way slowly. But like a bunch of fans went up and set up their own team in Leipzig. But, Dortmund fans boycott trips to the Red Bull Arena. And they've circumvented the 50+1 rules really by just making it really, really expensive for fans to buy in to the club. Like, I think it's like many multiples of trying to buy voting shares in Bayern Munich. It's the most expensive voting ticket in town, and so basically nobody has voting rights. It is run by Red Bull. So it was cynical, but they got around the rules that way. And even things like the rule in Germany was, well, you're not calling them Red Bull. Yeah. So they Rasen Bull Sport. So it's like, I think the rough translation is like lawn sport football, but they're RB Leipzig. So, even that left a bad-ish taste. So that's where Red Bull are now. It seems to be like an extraordinary success, and I would say very much hated in Germany. Generally, this multi-club ownership thing, not liked by most, but as with most things, we're just sort of a bit we get broken in by it all, and it's just normal. And now it's 20 years later, and it's like the done thing. So that's Jurgen Klopp's new home, which is an interesting choice for him.
Yeah, it's funny, like the Dortmund point, because they've obviously lost a bit of the moral high ground, or their fans, given the Rheinmetall situation and what went with that.
Remind me of that.
So basically an arms supplier, and it happened just before the Champions League final when all the goodwill in the world was going towards Dortmund to beat Real Madrid. And then this happened the week of that. But it was just specifically on the Red Bull thing seemed to take a back seat in that context, where that had been so prevalent for such a long time that Dortmund became the new bad boys in town, and it's like they're the ones that were kind of boycotting. So Red Bull are probably like happy days.
Yes.
And equally, Jurgen Klopp, I can't profess to know how beloved he is in Germany. Like
he's like right up there.
Yeah, because he had
there's not an ad campaign that he's not on.
Yeah, because he had obviously a preceding TV career where he was like the popular pundit of the day, and then given the rivalries and they're so set out that I can understand whether there probably is portions of Germany that don't like him to begin with, but this kind of puts him in an interesting position where he is taking a job where there is going to be a little bit of baggage, I should say.
Definitely.
And also, not to be too divergent on a totally different point, but his personality type doesn't seem to fit the job description, where like the way he stepped away from the Liverpool job was given to the extent to which he's an all or nothing type personality, and this seems very much you're at a remove, you're observing everything, whereas he seems very much like the on the grass touchline manager. So I don't know. I think nothing about this seems to be a natural fit as far as I'm concerned.
It's a strange one because of the baggage that Ronan mentions and the rivalry as well that you're touching on there between Leipzig and Dortmund, and how loved Klopp is by Dortmund. I mean, imagine he took over, he took this advisory role of the Man City group, where he was now looking after Melbourne, New York, Man City as well. That would just be...
Great story.
Yeah, exactly. And Liverpool fans would be like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
That's the same thing in Germany now as well. So, and then obviously you have the other side of it. Klopp has been... somebody who's demonstrated such a great social conscience before in the past. He's such a romantic about football.
Yes, it's the antithesis of romance.
Yeah, he spoke so strongly, so well about Roman Abramovich, about the Saudi takeover of Newcastle. I remember he said something, society has failed. Nobody said anything, and he was including himself in that. Society has failed, and maybe this is him just going along with it, and maybe he's just decided, you know what, this is a good gig. But the other thing that I think about from all this is that he's still too good a manager to be taking a role like this. I mean, literally his assistant in his last job is in charge of probably the biggest entity of this group.
I mean, the fact that the German national team clause has been so widely reported, it now almost feels like a fait accompli that he'll just take over after 2026.
Yeah.
And this is almost just like a nice earner in the meantime vibes,
But what if Linders isn't doing well? Obviously, there's awkwardness there. The Klopp has to be the one to...
Yeah.
I wonder is Pep Linders like, oh, jeez.
Yeah, but also the whole time...
I thought I was gone.
Yeah, they'll be sitting around in these group meetings like, that's not going well. Is there anybody we can think of that could come in and troubleshoot this? And Jurgen Klopp is sitting like... Do you imagine you took an advisory role here, podcast across the Irish Independent, and you weren't presenting, and it wasn't going well, and we needed a really good presenter? It's like, who can we think of here?
I appreciate you likening me to Jurgen Klopp. That's not OTT at all.
Likening myself to Linders as well, of course.
So that's Jurgen Klopp this morning. We have Caoimhín Kelleher in line for extended run in the first team. Liverpool confirmed that Alisson faces 6 weeks out with hamstring injury against Crystal Palace. Happened a similar time the other season. It was just post an international break, give or take. So that's his second hamstring problem of the season, Alisson. Liverpool might be looking here and going, is there the beginnings of an injury profile where he misses chunks of seasons? Who knows? But I guess for Kelleher, that kind of thing, you take what you can get, and that's good, and it did him no harm last year. So he'll be in. Hal Grimson and Ireland trained this morning. Never come across this before, so they're training first thing this morning instead of usually match day -1 is evening at the training at the football grounds. They were at the football ground. Aidan Fitzmaurice's piece today pointing out kick-off time is 9:45 local time. They are 2 hours ahead of us, and this is a common problem in Finland for these midweek games. it's stupidly late, and therefore the game is not a sellout. They play England at the weekend. That very much is a sellout. Finland against Ireland, not quite grabbing the locals. So I have a curious atmosphere maybe to be anticipated at this game on Thursday. Hal Grimson gave his press conference. He's talking about undoing the, quote, downward spiral that we're in. Which is like, oh, shit, really? Okay, they're all the headlines. The squad, and this is where I think you have to be really fair to Hal Grimson. The nature of international management, they've had one training session ahead of the training session at the ground this morning, which again is only going to be so thorough given that it's the day before a game. But he's talking about the fact they've had 5 meetings already for their one training session. Honestly, I feel much better in this camp, both on the meetings and the sessions. There's a higher tempo in what we're doing. And he reckons that means they're starting to get to grips with what he's asking of them. Here is a clip of Hal Grimson at the press conference this morning. So he was just asked any comparisons, parallels between taking over Iceland and taking over Ireland.
Starting from a low point, I would say, in both projects, trying to build a structure, which is really important in a national team, not taking it a game by game, but building something together from one game to another, trying to build on what we did last time, etc. I think that is really important. Said so many times that it's so different to be a national team coach. For example, if you just take this camp, and it will be the same next camp. Players play on Sunday, they cannot train on Monday. So yesterday was probably the only real training session we can have. So that's the only time we have all the players and they are physically ready to do a training session. So it's tough to be a coach and have only one training session. So we just need to have everything ready on what we did last time and try to build on that one, because the players will then go to their clubs and do something totally different for a month. And then next time they will come, we will again have one training session. So we just need to be ready and clear on what we want, not to overload the players with information, just keep on building and then slowly, camp by camp, improving what we are doing.
We had a great chat with Dan McDonnell and Dion Fanning in studio yesterday about all things Hal Grimson and just where Irish football is. I'd recommend it. Your initial impressions, Ronan, of HH?
Yeah, well, you've kind of touched on it there. With the nature of international management, it's actually no reflection on him specifically, but you don't have a very long time to get a grasp of things and go through the minutiae of it on the training ground. So I really do think you need that force of personality. And he does seem to have a bit of personality, but seemed to get off on the wrong foot with the whole assignment or otherwise of duties, and just there was no sense that I'm taking this and I'm dragging it forward. And Stephen Kenny, for all that, it didn't pan out as some people had hoped, he had a vision and he was very clear about that from the get-go. I just don't really get a sense yet of HH and what he's trying to do, and maybe we'll have more of a sense of that after this weekend. The sort of benefit of the doubt that I'm giving him there, and how quickly he was thrown in the deep end, that dissipates as the matches go by. And I'd like to have more of a sense by the end of this window of what he's going to try and achieve with this team.
Yeah, we touched on it yesterday with the two boys. I feel a bit sorry for him. The process has tainted his appointment a little bit. There's a really deep frustration. People are just so fed up with everything, all things Irish football. His second game against Greece, Irish fans booed at the end of the game. It's the shortest honeymoon in history. I think there's a real sense of Heimer, let's see what you can do. But I mean, we're Thursday to go badly and then Sunday to go badly. I think people would already be fed up of him and kind of thinking, well, we're counting down till you're gone. And it's really tough on him, I think.
People definitely want some sort of short-term hit, don't they? I think we all need it, and we've sort of...
Some Red Bull, some Monster, some Gatorade.
There is obviously so much apathy around the thing as well, so the longer it goes on without a result of any kind of note, then people are just so trigger happy with, especially when someone comes in and they're just like, yeah, look, this isn't really... Haven't got my feet under the table just yet. I mean, there's only so long you can do that in a new workplace, and not just speaking indirectly here about Ronan. But, that's the sort of feeling he gave off. And I wonder, maybe looking back, was he thinking, oh, it's England and Greece. Maybe for this camp, I'll just say I'm hands off. And because I do get the sense that he is a bit more, a bit more in charge of this camp.
Yeah, same. And I don't think it was totally unreasonable to kind of have, listen, I'll just watch how we do things a little bit first game. That said, if someone was to say, hang on, he had several months to get to know all the players, he should have hit the ground running, it needed it. I couldn't really argue with that. That would have been ideal for sure. I'm just saying it's not totally unreasonable that he didn't want to do that. But I think he underestimated the fact that we had gone through these, what felt like very important friendlies with interim management. So like we were fairly fed up of like, well, just hang on now, we'll ease our way into it. We were kind of like, geez, we've been waiting for a manager for so long, and now that you've started, you're still not starting. So I think all of these things have maybe contrived against him. The only other comments of note maybe out of Helsinki this morning, Nathan Collins, who's going to be captain in Seamus Coleman's absence, he is conceding that we are missing a few of the older boys, past leaders. There's been a kind of theme of leadership put to him. And it's time for boys to step up, start showing their leadership. It's been a very positive week. We've had a lot of meetings, so the meetings thing, we've had to. It's part and parcel of international football. I suspect we'll revisit that game in some shape or form tomorrow. Just before I get to a few emails, Amazon Prime, I got hooked in with an old free trial, signed up. I've put the reminder on my calendar to delete, which I'm sure I'll forget to do. But so I went in because I know that date is approaching, just to see what they had on. Four Kings, I'm giving it the old thumbs up. I'm 2 episodes in. So this is about an era of British boxing that we all lived through, but were too young to fully get on board with. The Four Kings being Frank Bruno, Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank, Lennox Lewis, and how Bruno and Lennox Lewis intertwined in the heavyweight division and Benn and Eubank in the middleweight division. Just to give you a little flavour. So they've got the four of them back. They're all doing interviews separately, it must be said, but good interviews intermingled with brilliant nostalgic archive footage. So here's a sense of the trailer.
If I am world champion, then how can I not be crazy? Because a normal mind can't do it.
It's metaphor, right?
The biggest week in boxing.
Tonight, history is to be made.
You had 2 heavyweights, 2 middleweights. We have never seen black athletes grabbing the headlines like this. It was insane.
A lot of people like me in England.
I would say I've got a big ego. I've really got a big ego. I was not just odd, I was on a different planet. To you, it looks like a sport. This isn't a sport. Some of us lose our lives.
That's a little taster of Four Kings. Really good. I have to say, I'd recommend it to people out there. And you heard Johnny Nelson there talk about we'd never seen black athletes dominate the headlines like this. So it's not kind of told through the prism of race at all, but that's a kind of significant aspect to the story, which I was too young to appreciate at the time. And they set the context so well. So you think in the 1980s, Frank Bruno is basically the most popular sportsman in the UK, give or take. He goes over to the States and has a brawl with Tyson and loses, but arrives home to just euphoria. He's so beloved, and obviously his personality is kind of endearing. But so that's the 80s. But in 1980, Ronan, I know you'd know about this, but I hadn't remembered or forgot, hadn't appreciated. There's a middleweight title fight where England's Alan Minter is taking on Marvin Hagler in Wembley. This is 1980. So Bruno's just about to emerge, and it's for the middleweight title. Minter is the champion and Hagler is the challenger. And like the build up to the fight is disgusting. Minter is saying things like he didn't intend to lose his title to a black man.
Wow.
Yeah. And promptly does lose his title. Yeah, and then suddenly Wembley Stadium just starts lobbing beer cans and all sorts of things at Hagler in the ring when he's just won the world championship, and he's like, escorted out of the ring. There's a pile of bodies on top of him to try and get him out, and a big kind of riot practically kicks off. So that's the context through which Bruno suddenly walks in the door and everybody loves him, and then follows Ben, who's he's called the Dark Destroyer. I'm not sure that nickname would be given necessarily today, but he is. But like his brother was murdered. He was pushed through pane of glass by, Ben says in the documentary, by a bunch of racists. He feels it was a racial murder. His brother was 17 at the time, and he cut his groin in the glass and bled to death. So he's got all of this anger. So that's Ben. And then you got Eubank, parents, Windrush generation, tries to become the quintessential English gentleman. You don't need to be Freud to work out something's going on there. And then you've Lennox Lewis, who's a Canadian gold medalist at the Olympics, and sees a gap in the market as Bruno's on the wane, and goes and stands in front of lots of Union Jacks and says, I'm English, and they just don't really buy it. And that's the kind of cocktail. I'm only 2 episodes in, so that's kind of where I was with it, but it's good, really, really good. It was a hell of an era as well.
Yeah, and there's just so much stuff spinning out of that. I'd be interested to see when I do watch it, like the extent to which they can capture all of that, because even now that era is definitive of so many different elements of modern boxing. Like everything Anthony Joshua does is commented upon and looked through the prism of what Lennox Lewis makes of it, because he was so transcendent in the heavyweight division. And equally, you've got Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. had been obviously pegged to fight at one point a couple of years ago. There was a quasi-drugs ban. Basically, Conor Benn hasn't fought in the UK since Aaron Test that scuppered that fight on Fight Week. So there's just so much. As you said, I have such FOMO of that era. So I was born in the early 90s, so I obviously missed the thrust of all of that. Kind of maybe caught the tail end of Lennox Lewis. He obviously had this slobber knocker with Vitaly Klitschko, and then he thought, okay, that's my era is done.
Yeah.
He did win, but he was like, okay, I think it's time to pass the torch here. Yeah. But then the next 20 years were a little bit, barring some other actual points of interest like Ricky Hatton and Joe Calzaghe. It actually has been the last decade or so when Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua came along that then now once again you see Wembley Stadium being sold out, and they almost did. They were tipping on 100,000 there a couple of weeks ago for the Joshua Dubois fight. So boxing has this interesting, it's never going to lose its intrigue. It's always big with the hardcore fans, and it has the capacity to really hit the front and back pages in a way that most sports don't. But it'll be interesting when people are doing podcasts in 50 years' time, if that's still the case.
Yeah, well, worth a look if you have Amazon Prime. It's called Four Kings. I mean, and they're all just the most phenomenal athletes. Chris Eubank, just this coiled spring of a human being. Even when he jumps over the ropes into the ring, his body fat must be minus 1%. I mean, just
and just like the boxer who got me into the sport when I was younger was Nassim Hamed, and again, like he's not even in this documentary, but he was such a huge figure, and again, crossover superstar. And him and Chris Eubank have a bit of a beef over who founded that ring entrance, who was the first one to jump over the ropes. It's like, actually, this footage is from before your footage.
On Four Kings, by the way, if that sounds familiar, you were just saying that's very much a homage to George Kimball's.
That's my favourite sports book anyway. For those of you who are interested in a recommendation, it's along similar lines, but it's US boxing scene. And the maybe slight quirk of difference there is all four of these guys fought each other. So that's Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler and Thomas Hearns. And they all at one point or another fought each other, and they were all getting significant wins, and it's such an even era. And if you're drawing up a short list of the best fighters of all time, all four would be on it. And the fact that they were all fighting each other, it is considered the last golden age of boxing. I think people are prisoner of the moment, and they tend to speak in reverential terms about the era that they lived in. But I think George Kimball was fair enough with that tagline. It was an extraordinary era.
Hands of Stone, Roberto Duran. Where in terms of this documentary, we spoke to Guenther about Drive to Survive. Where does this sort of rank in terms of viewership for somebody who's not a big boxing aficionado?
As in,
could I just drop into this now and really enjoy it? Like the Michael Jordan Last Dance, people would just enjoy that.
You don't know. In fact, it might even be beneficial if you don't know a thing.
Okay.
Yeah, plug right in. Yeah.
I'm in.
I think it'll suit everybody, because even if you're right into it, it'll be so wonderfully nostalgic, and you'll just be seeing footage you haven't seen before. And even to hear the guys currently talking about things, there's a freshness to it. But if you just didn't follow boxing at all, it's instantly interesting. Yeah, it's good. It's good. I'd give it a look. So that's Four Kings on Amazon. That's not a paid advertisement, by the way. I was watching something good last night and I thought, I'll mention that tomorrow. Emails to finish up. So we were talking about Match of the Day and the Humble Highlights show on not the Monday panel. And Daniel McGowan emailed in to say, hello, Joe and team. New listener from Scotland. Interesting discussion on Monday's show around sport, highlight package shows and their future. You may have missed it, but the BBC has picked up the Champions League highlights in the UK and they have rejigged the format, which is better than what Match of the Day on a Saturday offers. Mixture of extended highlights, short clips and borrowing some of Monday Night Football's tactical analysis and somehow managing to squeeze all the matches from Tuesday and Wednesday plus into an 80-minute slot. But it doesn't feel rushed. God, it sounds all too good to be true. Also, he says they have a punditry mix of ex-pros and journalists, which is fairly novel in terms of football programming in the UK, works much better. Might be a way forward to combine the best of Match of the Day and Monday Night Football and preserve the terrestrial highlights package, says Daniel McGowan. Daniel, thanks for the email. I'd seen BBC had it, actually, and I suppose I just hadn't bothered to watch it because you're so Champions Leagued out by the end of a Champions League night anyway, and they show you the goals from around the grounds as part of their coverage, so I kind of left it. But I'll have a look. I think particularly in Champions League, journalists on with ex-pros really work because the ex-pros, they can't be expected to know the ins and outs of RB Salzburg or RB Leipzig. So if you have a journalist on who covers that kind of end of things, it's helpful. But I'll have a look. Anyone seen it?
Yeah, I did see a little bit of it, and hopefully not stepping on the toes of a conversation you already had, but they really have repurposed it in a totally different way. Like they've taken this opportunity to have an existing brand, but come at it from a different angle. And I remember when the Saturday game was launched over here, and I was kind of thinking, because there's fewer games, they might have a better chance to really have a different perspective on it, or just take a different tack, have a tactics board or something. In the end, they seemed to just change the seating arrangements and then did the Sunday game on Saturday. So the fact that Match of the Day could have just called it something totally different and made it something different, but the fact that they're trying to branch that brand out a little bit is
it better?
Promising.
Is it good?
I just kind of hit on the points that the emailer said. I think it's very noticeable that the journalists are on. They hone in on things they wouldn't do typically on Match of the Day. Like it's not just great centre forward play from striker X. It's like, the significance of this result in the perspective of the winning team and their form line coming in here, which most viewers coming in probably wouldn't know from your average Champions League team. So it bodes well, and just highlights more generally, I think Shane outside would know in terms of NFL. I've always thought they've huge ownership of what they put out there, and even though they run everything through their social channels, they're kind of encouraging other people to take that footage and run with it. I always notice, like when Premier League football is on, you might notice a clip on Twitter and it's like a piece of skill or like a goal, and then within minutes it's taken down. So you're like going to show to someone and like, where they, unless it's on the official Premier League channels, you're not allowed to look at that. Whereas the NFL have full ownership, they distribute it within minutes of it happening. They do that service for you. Whereas I just think maybe other streaming outlets are maybe more too protective of it, and the sporting outlets, I know they have to value their sponsorships and who they give their broadcast rights to, but at the end of the day they're trying to promote their game.
Yeah,
should get it out there as much
free,
as possible.
free publicity, isn't it? Last one. Hi lads, last evening I heard you read an email from a truck driver regarding the volume level of your voice and other contributors. He explained precisely my experience. I thought it was just myself. I hope you can improve this issue, as certainly it would encourage me to listen more to your podcast, says Eddie Hulin. Eddie, thanks for the email. A couple of people did email in to say truck drivers not alone, not imagining things. It's definitely something to do with settings in your car. Like in my car, it's perfect the whole time, and in my headphones, perfect the whole time. So maybe certain cars, and it's an affliction. However, Paul outside has worked a little bit of magic, he thinks, which should negate any potential issues. So as of yesterday, and very much including right now, hopefully that's the problem fixed. So Eddie, let us know. Our truck driver friend from yesterday, let us know. Have we resolved that in the last 24 hours? We're kind of hoping we have. So that'd be good. Fellas, we're going to say our goodbyes. That was a little just casual chat. Not much more to it. We have Guenther Steiner on the way. He'll be in your podcast feed very shortly. Tomorrow, happy to say, Rory O'Connor in studio and Owen Redden with us to look ahead to Leinster, Munster and chat all things rugby. Owen Redden, I would say just about the one of the best rugby brains in the business. So we're thrilled he's going to be part of the coverage. So Owen Redden and Rory O'Connor tomorrow on the podcast. Indosportpodcast@independent.ie if you want to email us. Thanks very much. Now, we told you he was on, and it's a real treat. What an interesting life. The son of a butcher in Italy, no less. And here he is all these years later. Early 20s, Guenther started out in rallying as a mechanic. He switched to F1 in 2001. Niki Lauda gave him the call, went to Jaguar, the period at Red Bull. And of course, we know him from Team Haas there for the last just over 10 years. Tight budgets, some good years, some tricky years. And at Christmas just gone, he got the phone call. And in the meantime, he's been doing commentary on German TV, and he's written a great book called Unfiltered, which is in your bookstores waiting to be read for Christmas. And of course, you kind of can't not mention Guenther without Drive to Survive. He is the breakout star. Everybody sort of fell in love with him. And so that's the short version of his story. By the way, we'll just kick things off with a little reminder. And if you have kids in the car, turn off now. This is Guenther fucking Steiner.
Fuck. 4th and 5th, but Gene, we finished 4th and 5th here. We fucking look like rock stars, huh? And now we are a fucking bunch of wankers. Yeah, bunch of fucking clowns here. The car was not a piece of shit. So why do we develop a car which fucking goes slower? Find out the problem and make progress out of it instead of this is better. It isn't this is better. It fucking isn't. He's not fucking doing that to me, you know? He does not fuck smash my door. Tell him that. How many assistants have you got, Fred? I have nobody because I have no money. And you've got 3 people running around you. Yeah. Another one coming. It's 4 now. You're so stupid.
Guenther Steiner, a very warm welcome to Indosport. Fantastic to have you on. Hello.
Hello. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Some of the things I never watched Drive to Survive and I didn't hear it. So some of the things are completely new to me. And by the way, that wasn't me. That was somebody else.
No.
Voiceover.
If your daughter is listening, that was not me.
Yeah. For sure she listened to it, but I think even she's embarrassed about it, so she doesn't say anything.
There is a moment in the book where you've had a big meeting with somebody and Gertie, your wife, says, "How did it go?" And you say, "Quite well," by the look on your face, she says. And you say, "I can't say for sure, but I think I might be onto something. This guy knows his stuff." "Is he rich though?" says Gertie. "Rich? He's literally shitting fucking dollars." She says, "Guenther!" And you say, "Sorry." And you write, "I'm not supposed to swear when I'm at home."
Correct. I'm not. I get always told off, and I never ask my wife what she thinks about Drive to Survive, because that is one of the reasons I don't watch it, because guess what? I don't want an answer because she's not happy about it. But she watched it, but she knows me anyway, so.
The end at Haas, I know you've talked about it quite a bit, but people might be interested. You say, so this is Christmas and you're standing at the deli counter staring at a nice looking piece of ham when all of a sudden my phone started ringing. It was Jean. When you saw Jean pop up on your phone as you're looking at that piece of ham, were you anticipating a call to end your contract?
No, not really anticipating, but the relationship was tense already. So I was not anticipating, but I was not surprised that he didn't want to renew the contract, because neither I wanted to renew it for another 3 years, So it was actually not too bad for me. Actually, it was pretty good for me not to have renewed. I feel happy now.
You said the phone call was maybe 6 or 7 minutes, and so he, you answered the phone and he says to you, "Why do you think we've been doing so badly, Guenther?" And you sort of say, "Oh, Gene, we've been through this a million times," and you have the same conversation about money and a lack of an investment, and the team is worth $1 billion and you've got to put more into it, and you have that conversation. He says, "Anyway, Guenther, your contract is up for renewal. I've decided not to renew it." And you say, "Okay, Gene, fine with me," and you hang up. Look, I know it's a cutthroat business. That is not the way to fire someone after 10 years.
No, it's obviously, but in the end, that's Gene Haas, in the end, he can do it. He doesn't want to renew it. And, it was no point to fight it, because I was not unhappy about it, not to have the contract renewed. Obviously, as you say, these things, normal, civilized people do it differently. You work together, or somebody works for you for 10 years, creates you a good business, a good base of business, good money, a good increase or a good investment, a growth, and then to do this. But hey, I cannot change people. I don't want to change people. I don't need to change people. I'm pretty. I mean, I realized afterwards, I'm free. I can move on. I can do things which I like. I'm a happy man. I've got a good family. I'm not doing too badly, and I do things which I enjoy. So, that's it. I mean, it was more like, when you work with a team for 10 years, you would like to have the chance to say thank you to the team and give them a goodbye. I mean, that was harder for me, not having the chance even, somebody this disrespectful, not even giving a chance to do that. But hey, it's him. I mean, at some stage he will find out that it wasn't the right thing to do, but maybe, I don't know. But anyway.
Yes.
So be it.
Have you spoken to him since?
No, and I don't want to.
Do you, I know you're enjoying your freedom and maybe you don't miss the stress of the job, which we'll talk about in a moment. But that said, do you feel a bitterness towards him?
No, I don't feel bitterness. I'm not a bitter guy. I feel like, it's I had a good time. I don't regret anything. I'm not bitter. I mean, obviously, you maybe know that I fight a lawsuit against him because he doesn't want to pay me the money. I think I am owed due to my contract, which he signed, Anyway, he filed a lawsuit against me about my first book, which obviously... maybe as well, was dismissed by the judge, wasn't even taken on. No, I don't feel bitter. I just want, what is right. I want, and I try to get it. But I mean, I'm not losing any sleep over it.
You live in North Carolina, and your wife Gertie says to you at one stage in the book, shortly after the phone call from Gene Haas, "I haven't seen you like this in years." Like what? You have a spring in your step, like you used to have.
Yeah, I'm always a guy which I look always forward to the next thing, always motivated with energy. And the last 2 years were just like, to explain it, I think can explain it like this. When you're in Formula One, you set up a team. The first years were pretty good. We finished 8-8, and then the third year, 5th, which was very good. Then we went a little bit backward, and then COVID came, and all went downhill from there. So, and after a while, it's like, do I really want to work, And it was always, can we make a point? We made a point. And it's like, yeah, we made a point 6-7 years ago. What is next? I mean, I cannot chase a point for the next 10 years. I mean, that is not what I want to do. I want more. I want a bigger challenge than chasing a point. But I need some help to do this. I cannot do it on my own with the investment which is there. I need to grow the company. I need to grow the quality, everything of the team. And that was not given to me. And now, and that drags you down because you know what you should be doing, but you cannot do it. It's like you're doing a podcast and your producer doesn't give you a microphone. How the hell should you do a podcast? It's about like this. And we got points, but it's like always, hooray, we made a point. Yeah, great. I mean, and you just realize it when you're gone, but that is what it is. I can now do things I like to do. I've got always a lot of ideas what to do. And, I'm free. That's the best thing. I can decide what I do. I don't have to wait for anybody or ask anybody what to do.
When are you starting your podcast?
I've got one already, 1 hours in the States, so you should listen into it, Yeah.
Are you itching to get back into Formula One? Would you like another offer? Does some part of you miss the adrenaline that only a job like that can give you?
A little bit, you miss the adrenaline. Good that you bring that one up. You miss a little bit, like when the cars are going out for qualifying. But it's okay. I was there. It's not like, I cannot live without this. No, it's good. I can live without it. Do I want to get in? If the right opportunity comes, if a project comes along where I can see that I can achieve, that we can achieve, not me as a person, the team can achieve something what I want to achieve, it is aligned. Yes, I'm open to it, but just to go and do a job, no need for it, just to do a job to get the point now and then. I've done that.
Like most people, I've watched a fair portion of Drive to Survive. I don't like many of the drivers. They are young in the worst way. They have huge egos. They are selfish. They are far too rich. They are far too famous. I just can't warm to a lot of them. You have to handle a lot of these people. I'd be interested in your impressions of them, these young men in these unbelievably privileged positions and the types of personalities who tend to make it as Formula One drivers, because a huge part of your job is to handle them.
Yeah, I think some of them, and as I said, I didn't watch Drive Survive, so I don't know how they come over, but a lot of them, I think, come over because they are in public different than they are in reality. Obviously, some of them believe their own propaganda. Some of them are actually very down-to-earth people, which I would say is not even playing. They have to play this role of being what they should be, because it is demanded from the outside world that if you are a young, successful, rich, good-looking driving an F1 car, because there's only 20, this is what you should be, and obviously, and I think some of them are actually very normal people, and they are happy to be very normal people. Some of them, you hear this often, "Oh, Formula One is too hard, it's too much work, and then once they go away, all of a sudden they miss it, because they cannot do anything else without it. That's their problem then, and then they fall in a hole. But I think most of the latest ones coming up, they are surrounded by good people, which bring them along to be good human beings, because that is very important in life. Obviously, as you say, they get more money than they ever thought they will make, most of them, so it is a very difficult position to be in.
Yes, I'll bet it is. Who are some of the more down-to-earth, likeable drivers? I know it doesn't have to be an exhaustive list, but who jumped to your mind when you said that?
I mean, Kevin Magnus is a very normal person. He can be very, have very short words when he talks to media, but he's a very normal person, loves his family. He doesn't love anything more than going back to his family. A lot of them, Danny Rick, we all know that he's a very normal person. When he gets to it, he's up for every funny thing to do. There is, a lot of them are pretty normal.
Okay. Yeah, it could be the portrayal.
The portrayal, that's the right word for it. The portrayal, and what the public actually want them to be as well.
Yes, we want James Hunt. That's it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Rock and roll, yeah. We want rock and roll.
I know you weren't there back in the day, but has that aspect of the circuit changed? That Playboy Eddie Irvine parties around, at different wherever the races are on, have things calmed down in that respect? Is it a more professional environment, or is there still that element of hedonistic partying that goes hand in hand with the sport?
No, I think Eddie was the last, as you rightly said. Eddie was the last of them, last of that generation. I don't think you could do it these days anymore. What these guys did, with all the social media and all that stuff, it's just difficult to do. And also, the sport has become a lot more professional. Sure. Is that good? Yes. Is it good for entertainment? Maybe not. We all like a little bit of rock and roll, or not all of us. I shouldn't speak for everyone, but I quite like it, So it's quite entertaining. So rock and roll these days is different. But no, it has changed. It's just not there anymore. And with 24 races, you couldn't even behave like this anymore, just because of your physical state to do this.
I would think it's a very common question. We mentioned you were coming on the podcast, and listeners emailed in different questions, and quite a few of them wanted us to ask you, if all of the cars were the same, then across a full season, who's the best driver in Formula One currently? Who would come out on top?
I think on top, and it's now, you would have race-specific strength, but in general, if you take an average, I think in the moment, Max would be very strong. Max is very good. Max is a real racer. He can drive a car, difficult cars to drive. So I think Max will come out pretty strong.
I'm very curious. When you're judging who the best driver is, can you do it with your eyes? So, I judge it by looking at the clock, and I'm totally reliant on what they've done in terms of their times. But can you just watch a driver going around a circuit and not see any data and just see it and smell it and know that he's fast?
I have to say, be honest, I say no, because I think it is so close, because they are all very talented. And you see more of if a car is good or not, if the car has traction or not, out of a corner, that's what you watch. But with the driver, you have to be careful because they are so close together. When we are talking tens of seconds over a lap of almost 1.5 minutes, if somebody says you can see how somebody attacks the corner or not, because there is no fool anymore in Formula One at the moment. They are so close together if you think about it. So for me, I couldn't do that. I do not think that there is many people around which could do that. Actually, just by watching it, saying this guy is talented and this guy isn't so, because they're all very good in F1.
You've been in Formula One since 2001, since you joined Jaguar. In those 23 years, who do you think has been the most talented driver that you've seen?
I think one of the biggest talents was Michael Schumacher in that period. Michael was Lewis is very talented as well. Lewis Hamilton, he's very talented. I mean, they all, it goes in eras, and an era in F1 is not 20 or 30 years. It's normally 5 to 10 years for a driver. And in this era, Michael was good. Would Michael be as good in the new era or in the era when Lewis was strong? Maybe not, because the cars change, and, because Lewis now is struggling a little bit with Max Verstappen, to be honest, with the new generation, because there's a different era now coming in, but Lewis is very good as well. He wasn't, is still good.
So would drivers today have different attributes to what Schumacher had?
A little bit, I would say yes. But, the cars advance so much and the controls are so much more sophisticated, and you just need to know exactly what to do with the car. And sometimes drivers, if they grow up in one area with one type of car, with driver 8 and something, they know that era very well. And when they have to change, they struggle to go into the next one, And we will have that one maybe when 26 the new rules come. The young drivers maybe pick that one up better than the old ones.
Have you ever driven a Formula One car around a track?
No.
Why not?
I think I couldn't do it. I don't want to do it. I would embarrass myself more than anything else.
Just when no one's looking on a late Thursday evening,
There's always somebody looking when an F1 car is going around the racetrack. So no, and I don't know if I could even fit in it. I'm quite tall.
It's interesting you haven't watched much Drive to Survive. I was reading, I think it was you made the point, that about 50% of the current Formula One audience globally is as a result of Drive to Survive, which is absolutely extraordinary. And we've seen so many other sports hoping that Netflix will have a similar effect on their sport, golf and others, and it hasn't. Something about Drive to Survive, maybe it's because it was first, maybe I think in part characters like you just helped it land with people. When did you realise, was there a moment or a certain race where you thought to yourself, I seem to be very popular here today?
Yeah, when it came out, it started pretty quick. It wasn't what it is now, but it started pretty quick when people start to recognize you. Because before, the fan recognized you, but it was like, hey, this is Guenther Steiner. But then when it came out, it started pretty quick. The people wanted selfies and things like this, and there where I saw that it actually had a good success.
Did you like it? Some people don't want fame. Did you think I enjoy this?
I don't dislike it, but it's not something. If it isn't there, I'm fine as well. It's not something because I didn't work for this. Some people like it because they worked for this to be famous. I didn't do it because to be famous. I did it because I like for Formula One racing. But you get there and you can anyway not stop it once it is out. So it's better to get along with it and you work with it and get the best out of it. Than try to fight it and running around with a hoodie on all the time and stuff like this, because then you are paranoid. I try to be as normal as I can, and if somebody wants a selfie, so be it. It's fine,
Because I think, we were laughing here yesterday when we were just reminiscing about it, and in light of talking to you, and people were saying they could always relate to you. For instance, when you would, after a bad day, and you'd say, "Oh shit, I have to talk to Jean." And people understand that feeling. But it was really remarkable, I thought, that your conversations with Gene went out on Drive to Survive. Obviously, we couldn't hear what he was saying, but you were mic'd up. You mightn't have been in vision, but your conversation was recorded because the microphone lapel was on. Did you tend to forget that was being recorded, those moments?
Absolutely. Yeah, I tend to forget pretty quick, these things, and because I had it done so many times, I must give credit to the people at Box to Box which do the filming for Netflix. They were always fair, because I think I say things where you really shouldn't put on TV. So and as I said, I had always somebody, because you can check it before it goes out, and I had always our head of communication doing it. So sometimes he said, "Guenther, I had to take a few bits out because that wouldn't have been good."
Okay.
So you always had that chance, but when it's on, you think, yeah, I just do my job. If they want to hear it, fine.
Yeah, which is great. It's what makes it really work. The championship currently, I know you're doing some work with RTL, some commentary on German television. We have the United States Grand Prix next. That's on the horizon. It's kind of interesting at the moment. There are 6 races left, and 7 races into the season, Max Verstappen had won 5 of them. And I'll be honest, me and a lot of people watching thought, oh no, here we go again, another dull season. And yet he now hasn't won in 8 races. And I guess Lando Norris is within touching distance, still a bit behind, 52 points. Have we got a title race here, or is Verstappen going to be fine?
We got a title race. I think Lando will make it. They are doing very well. McLaren is strong, and as you said, who would have expected after the first 5 races that what the last 5 races will be? I think Lando will make it. That's my opinion. But obviously, Max will fight for it. That he takes the title home, and he's already strategically working. He's not trying to win the race at all costs. He tries to get as many points at all costs. So it will be hopefully quite tight, and hopefully goes into the last race. It
is amazing how this sport goes. Verstappen was talking about what's happened over the last couple of months, and just the kind of the technical aspects of the sport. So he said, our car's just been very difficult to drive. And at the same time, the others have made progress. And he was talking about how the front and the rear of the car were not feeling connected anymore. And interestingly, he was saying maybe our wind tunnel that we use at Red Bull is a little bit outdated. I mean, it's mad, the factors that come into it, that suddenly everything's lovely and then the front and the back of the car aren't connected. I mean, I can see how team principals go berserk.
Yeah, this car, they're so sophisticated, and the tools used to develop these cars are so sophisticated. So every little bit what somebody has better than the other one helps to make the difference. But I go back to normally now between the fastest and the slowest car, it's a second. It's a second. There's a different driver in there. There's a complete different people made the car, and you've got a second of difference over 1 minute and 20 seconds lap. It's nothing. It's nothing if you think how much is a second. And then between the first and the second, there is a tenth, or not even that one, a tenth of a second. That is nothing. That is meters, not even meters anymore. So, it's so competitive, and every little bit makes a difference.
It strikes me Formula One was a little bit unlucky as well. I mean, it's good that you think Lando is really going to push Verstappen here, because if you think of Saudi Arabia in 21, Verstappen against Hamilton, it was this extraordinary crescendo finale to a season. And the whole world, I think, was ready to just go Formula One nuts. And then we had 2 years of Verstappen cruising. It was terrible timing in a way for 2 seasons like that. I think everyone is itching for another race.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, and you never can predict what is happening next. I mean, this year, 7 different drivers won races. Think about that one. 4 different manufacturers won races. It's something last year at this time, nobody would have ever dreamt of it. It was a dream, but nobody thought the dream will come true, and the dream came true.
Yes. Last one, if you could change anything about Formula One to make it more entertaining, to make it more popular, what would you change?
In the moment, I wouldn't change anything big. I would maybe add a few more sprint races, from 6 to 12 maybe, the next point, because I think free practices are not what people want to see in 2024 or 2025 anymore. They want to see competition, to fight for something. That's my thing. All the rest, I think it's in a very good place, Formula One. FOM does a very good job, and the next thing is to stabilize the sport where it is now with the spectators, because that's difficult to do as well, because it had a boom, and hopefully it doesn't go down. But I think it's in a good place actually. The bubble will not explode, in my opinion. They are very clever people which manage that one. But otherwise, I think it's a good place. If I would say do something, let's go from 6 to 12 on sprint races.
Okay, and hopefully we might see you back in a paddock someday soon.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Guenther, it was great talking to you. It's the book again is unfiltered. You didn't curse once in the entire interview. Gertie will be very pleased with you, so that's good.
I normally don't in interviews, that is just that's my racing language, the cursing.
Good man. Well, listen, lovely to talk to you. Guenther Steiner, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye.